Whenever a movie or a television show uses a line like, "What does your heart tell you?" Or maybe, "You can do the impossible if you just trust your heart." Well, the moment those lines come out, you will hear the inevitable, "Oh my, that's terrible, terrible advice. You cannot follow your heart, for God tells us that our heart is deceitful and desperately sick. No one should ever trust their heart." Why? Because your deceitful heart is so symptomatic of the fact that you are a sinner at the very core of your being. You are in constant rebellion against God. You have a heart that is bent far, far away from God. Never, ever trust your heart. So here's the question I pose. Why the drumbeat about how awful your heart is? Where did this belief come from that the heart should never, ever be trusted? Where did we get this? How do we believe this? Well, that's a great question. And the answer is this. It is based on Jeremiah 17:9. This verse is the go-to verse, if you will, for this type of thinking. Let me read Jeremiah 17:9 to you. "The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it?" It is said that Jeremiah 17:9 represents a clear commentary on the fallen state of humanity, stating that the heart is deceitful above all things. This verse, it said, lays bare the fact that the human heart is sick and prone to deception, consistently leading people astray. In short, what we're told is our heart is a lying heart. It is a foul heart from which all manner of evil comes from. It is also unknowable in that it can never, ever be trusted. Well, think about that for a moment. Because if in fact all of that is true, if this understanding of the heart that so many say is true, then why do I read the following, that is, the wisdom found in Proverbs 3? This is what it reads. "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding." How am I supposed to trust God with all my heart if my heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick? If my heart is a liar and evil to the core, how am I supposed to trust the Lord with it? Or let me give you another Proverbs. This one's found in Proverbs 4. "Keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flows the springs of life." Well, why would I be vigilant to keep, that is, to protect and to preserve a sick and deceitful heart, expecting it to bring forth springs of life? That seems to me to be a very pointless exercise. Well, let me give you one more. This is in Proverbs 7. "Keep my commandments and live. Keep my teaching as the apple of your eye. Bind them on your fingers. Write them on the tablet of your heart." Why would I write God's commandment on the tablet of my heart when my heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick? That is, it's incurable. Why bother to write anything on my heart? A heart that Jeremiah 17:9 says that no one can understand. Well, this doesn't make any sense. So what is it that we're going to do with Jeremiah 17:9? Because it appears very much on its face that the heart indeed is deceitful above all else and desperately sick. It is unknowable. So how then do we square this verse, Jeremiah 17:9, with so many others that tell us to do positive things with a heart that Jeremiah is telling us is a negative thing, a deceitful and sick heart? How do we bring the positive and the negative together? Well, let me suggest a solution concerning this dilemma. Is it possible that we are missing something when we're reading Jeremiah 17:9? And the answer is yes, we are missing something. What we are missing is context. First, we are missing cultural context. What do I mean by that? When we see the word heart and immediately understand it from a 21st century point of view, we need to ask ourselves, though, what did an ancient Hebrew or a first century Jew believe about the heart? Because that's what we need to be seeing, not our present day understanding of how we view heart. And then secondly, we are missing immediate context. This verse, like so many others, has been lifted out of its immediate context, making it stand alone. And the result? Well, we're going to misunderstand it, and when we misunderstand it, we will most always misapply it. So, let's look at these two problems that both deal with context and address them as it relates to Jeremiah 17:9, our heart. Let's begin with the word heart. That is the meaning of this word heart to an ancient Hebrew. In Jeremiah 17:9, if it had been written in the 21st century, we might have understood this verse as a warning against overemphasizing the way we feel, our feelings, our emotions. Because when we in present day we encourage someone to follow their heart, what we're telling them is to do what feels right, to do what feels good. In contemporary culture, at least in the West, the heart embodies how we feel, our emotions. We closely align it with feeling. Thus, when we say, I'm heartbroken, what we're saying is, I'm very sad. Or we might say, my heart is overflowing. What we're saying is, I am so very happy. So it's understandable why it is that people in Christian circles today would say that the heart cannot be trusted, that you should never, ever follow your heart. Because what they mean by that in a modern setting is, don't let your emotions be the ultimate guide in the choices or the decisions that you make. And you know what? That would be very wise. That's smart. But here's the question we need to ask. Would an ancient Hebrew or even a first century Jew, would they have understood heart simply embodying the emotions? And the answer would be no, they would not. And here lies the problem. Generally speaking, modern people try to understand Jeremiah 17:9 without a biblically informed definition of heart. The heart in biblical physiology is the seat of volition and understanding rather than feelings or emotions. The heart, biblically speaking, is the place of your will. That is the choices that you make. And your mind, that is your understanding of the matters at hand. When the Bible, both the Old and New Testament, when they speak about the heart, they are not primarily referring to the way we feel. That's not the issue here, but rather wisdom, understanding, and the choices that result from that wisdom. The ancients understood the heart as the engine room of volition rather than emotion. It's for this reason that Jesus made this statement: out of the heart of man comes evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, coveting, wickedness, deceit, sensuality, envy, slander, pride, foolishness. What Jesus was doing was appealing to the Old Testament understanding of the heart. The sin committed by the people are rooted in their lack of wisdom and the choices that they make as a result. As we saw back in Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23, it exhorts us to keep our heart with all vigilance, for from the heart flows the springs of life. The heart, biblically speaking, is the seat of understanding and volition. Therefore, it is imperative to guard it above all else, for the heart determines the course of life. Making good choices, that is, due to godly wisdom, brings forth success. Let me say it again. Making good choices due to godly wisdom brings forth success. When Jesus made this pronouncement regarding the heart, he had just upbraided the Pharisees and the scribes for their hypocrisy. He pointed out that these religious elites, they honored God with their mouths, but he told them, your hearts are far from God. They had ignored the commands of God, Jesus told them, because rather they chose to give adherence to the traditions of men. The emotions of the scribes and the Pharisees were not the problem. Their feelings were not inherently deceitful or sick. What was deceitful and sick were the choices they were making. And most telling was the choice that they made to leave the commandment of God and hold fast to the traditions of men. Again, the problem was not their emotions. Please understand, it was the choices that they made. To the ancients, the heart was not about how you feel, but rather what you chose based on what you understood. So that was the first problem. That is the cultural context, the meaning of the word heart. But there's another problem, that is the immediate context. Jeremiah 17:9 placed in its immediate context. What's going on here? Well, what was happening when Jeremiah told the people that their hearts were deceitful and desperately sick? Why was he telling them that their center of their volition, if you will, their decision-making was in a very bad place? Why did he tell them this? In fact, he told them it was so incredibly bad that he claimed, who can understand the heart of these people? Who can make sense of the choices that the people of Judah have made? He's telling them that their hearts are deceitful and sick, and he steps back and says, who can understand? What's going on here? What is he saying? Now keep in mind the biblical understanding of the word heart, which is dealing with the choices you make based on what you understand. When we interpret Jeremiah 17:9, that is, when we put it back into its immediate context, there's something that we're going to see that's very important. We're going to discover that in chapters 16 and 17, because they go together, you're going to discover that Jeremiah is giving a prophecy of the coming judgment on Judah. Why the judgment? Well, these people, that is the people of Judah, they had been unfaithful to Yahweh. They were worshiping other gods. I want you to listen to what Yahweh tells Jeremiah to say when the people discover that they are being judged by Yahweh. This is what we read in Jeremiah 16. When you tell this people all these words, and they say to you, why has the Lord pronounced all this great evil against us? What is our iniquity? What is the sin that we have committed against the Lord our God? Then you shall say to them, because your fathers have forsaken me, declares the Lord, and have gone after other gods, and have served and worshiped them, and have forsaken me, and have not kept my law. And because you've done worse than your fathers, for behold, every one of you follows his stubborn evil will, think heart, refusing to listen to me. Therefore I will hurl you out of this land into a land that neither you nor your fathers have known, and there you shall serve other gods day and night, for I will show you no favor. Judah had committed the most grievous sin, the sin of idolatry. They had broken the very first commandment. You shall have no other gods before me. And this was very serious. Well, this prophecy that Jeremiah is giving, it continues when we read in Jeremiah 17. The sin of Judah is written with a pen of iron. With a point of a diamond, it is engraved on the tablet of their heart and on the horns of their altars, while their children remember their altars and their Asherim beside every green tree and on the high hills, on the mountains in the open country. Your wealth and all your treasures I will give for spoil as the price of your high places for sin throughout all your territory. Jeremiah is comparing Judah's heart to an extremely hard surface on which the sin of their idolatry will be engraved with an iron pen that is fitted out with a diamond point. Judah had built altars on the high places to worship Asherah, the Canaanite mother goddess, the wife of El, who was the father of all the gods. And it's no wonder that Jeremiah proclaimed that the heart of these people was deceitful and sick. The issue was not their emotions. It was the seat of their volition. It was the choices that they were making. They had chosen to abandon Yahweh and to worship the mother goddess Asherah, who was believed to be the mother of all the gods. And they had made this fateful choice, a choice that made no sense other than to reveal the deception and the sickness of their hearts. Their hearts, the center of their volition, were hopelessly dark, sick. This is why Jeremiah asked the question, who can understand it? In Jeremiah's mind, to worship this goddess, Asherah, was a puzzle no one could figure out. People, Jeremiah 17:9 was not about Judah's emotions, but rather about the choices they were making. The prophet Jeremiah exposed their deceitful and sick hearts, their willfulness to commit the sin of idolatry. He then asked them how anyone could possibly understand the stupidity of their blatant unfaithfulness. Judah abandoned Yahweh for Asherah. So, reading Jeremiah 17:9 in its cultural and immediate context, well, it sheds light as to what the prophet was saying. The 9th verse is not warning you to never follow your heart. That is not what is going on. That is not the issue. When we tell others, particularly our children, to never trust their heart because their heart is deceitful above all else and desperately sick, we are not doing them any favors. We are setting them up for a mountain load of self-doubt and confusion that will lead to uncertainty and inaction. When we quote Jeremiah 17:9 as a biblical truth to never trust the heart, we're exposing our lack of understanding as to what is actually taking place in Jeremiah, these chapters 16 and 17, the coming judgment on Judah for their idolatry and unfaithfulness. What is needed is to understand that the Hebrew word heart is not about emotions, but what you understand and the choices that come from that understanding. This is why the proverb tells you and me to guard our hearts with all vigilance, for it's out of the heart that the choices are made, and that determines the course of our life. Why Proverbs tells us to keep the commandments and live by writing them on our hearts, the volitional center of our being. It is why Proverbs tells us to trust God with all of our heart, with all of our choices, because the choices we make set the direction our lives will take. Listen, I do hope this has been helpful. Looking at this verse in Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9, that is, that it's not about never trusting your heart, but rather it's all about this judgment that was being brought on Judah because of their idolatry. And when we put it back into its immediate context and understand the cultural context, that is the meaning of the word heart, it suddenly opens up and we see something very important. This is why you and I need to be students of God's Word. As we grow in our understanding, and as that understanding gets written on our hearts, literally written in our minds, where we have the understanding, where we gain the wisdom, and then from that wisdom and that understanding, we make godly choices that will lead to success in our lives. Well, listen, thanks for watching. And hey, if this has been helpful, take a moment, if you will, to hit that like button. And also, again, if you've not yet subscribed to this channel, let me encourage you to do that as well. But again, thanks so much for watching. And as always, God's very best to you.